Hey guys, my name is Colson Rosa, and welcome back to Seraphim Stories. So, as some of you guys might know, I've actually been using this time in quarantine to write my next book. And it's been awfully strange trying to figure out my new writing system during this time. But I want to give you guys some tips on a little bit of my writing process, and even as I look forward to future videos where I get to talk to you guys more about the process of writing and editing a book. What does that look like for me during quarantine? So this is going to be the third book in the Sentinel series, which is a sci-fi superhero series that pits our heroes up against the great and ever-increasing force of the Lantinus, which is an alien race that's been seeking to take over the planet Centaurus. And the third book in this series is called Sentinels Underground, and it continues on from the last book called The Sentinels Skyward Alliance, which I'm hoping to be releasing soon. Now, this book has a lot writing for it in the sense of a story that not only builds upon the stakes, but seeks to wrap up and conclude a lot of the storyline. But I wanted to still leave room for the potential for more books in this series. So I'm really curious to hear how you guys feel about the ending once I get to it. In the meantime, I'm only about a third of the way through the rough draft. But considering the fact that I just started this book once quarantine began, as far as writing the actual rough draft, I'm really happy with the progress. And that being said, it all started from the plotline that I developed previously. Now, some of you may know what a plotline is, some of you may not. So I'm going to give a quick breakdown about why I love plotlines so much. They're a sort of bullet point, step-by-step analysis of the story. It's a breakdown of what's going to happen to the characters and how are they going to respond to it. So I usually just start with a couple ideas I have, and I'm really hoping to put out a video soon about how to be creative and think of brand new ideas that work well and complement other ideas you have. But in the meantime, I'll suffice to say that these plot lines are sort of a guiding template for when I'm writing the book. Now, they're not law, they're not code that I have to follow. I'll often find myself going back and changing parts of the story that don't seem to make sense in the plot line. But it's a rough concept of everything from the beginning to the end and every step along the way. So, like I said, I'll usually just start out with some basics. I'll start out with some major events that are going to take place, and then I'll kind of fill in the gaps between them. So that by the time I'm done with a plot line, I might have 2, 3, 4 bullet points for each chapter, and kind of recognizing how they're going to work in conjunction with the next chapter and the next chapter. And they build upon each other so that there's no missing gaps. And what can also be helpful to the side to build up as well alongside your plotline could be something like character arcs. What motivates your characters? Where do they start the story? Where do they end? And also major threads of the plot, major ideas you've been running with, so that by the time your story's done, you don't leave it with a bunch of plot holes. And it's actually good in the editing process that I've been experiencing with Sentinels Skyward Alliance, that I've had to push myself to learn more and more as an author what makes sense to my reader and what do I just have in my own head. So it's easy to assume that you've explained something well just because you have a good idea of what you're thinking of. But you need to use your words precisely and carefully. There's a concept called economy of words, which is basically just saying the more clearly you can say something in less words is better, because it allows it to make more sense and not be wordy and drag on. But at the same point in time, economy of words shouldn't be taken too far where you don't have enough and the story feels lacking. It feels like there's not enough description, there's not enough dialogue, there's not enough action, or there's not enough touching character moments that build them up, rise them up, make them stand out from other characters and feel special to you as a reader. I think that's something Harry Potter does really well, is it takes each character and tries to make them relatable in a unique way, but also tries to make them, at least for the major characters, have special quirks and oddities about them that we either love or hate, but we remember. And it causes those characters to stand out. So that's something I've been thinking through with my characters is, where do I want their story ending up? How do I want them reacting, both for the best and for the worst, toward the rising challenges that they're facing? Because the challenges never seem to stop. When you're on a colony that's on a rocky desert planet that's barely supporting life at all, and they could lose their entire way of life, their entire existence, if they don't rally together. And yet rallying together can be so hard with these kinds of stresses. And it's been really interesting for me to look at my own life and these themes for myself and say, how am I rallying together with my community, with my family, and looking at the challenges we face and saying, let's get through this together, and saying, let's not forget that God has brought us through these things before and he can do them again. So I think it's really cool just to recognize that just as my characters have to be banding together in this trying time, we need to be doing the same thing. And writing during quarantine has showed me that in a couple unique ways. Now, a lot of people think it's all glitz and glamour to be an author. It's a lot of the Hollywood type stereotypes of going to fancy places people have never been and pulling out a sketchbook and drawing concept art on your own. Now, some of those things happen. Some of those things are going out into the mountains and just taking in the wonders of the world we get to see around us. But it's not always a penthouse studio and a team of editors. Sometimes it's going down into your basement where it's quiet, finding those perfect songs to turn on that just inspire you to be more creative and have more fun and imagination. But then also it's the balance of being serious enough about your stories because you care so deeply about your readers and about your characters. And serious in the sense of, how can I tighten this up? How can I tighten up the dialogue? Tightening up the dialogue in particular has been an interesting challenge for me because there's two extremes. There's the extreme of making people say things that don't sound real at all. And then there's the other extreme of making your conversation so casual that it sounds like these are just a couple of high schoolers talking about life, not professionals in their industry seeking to start a war and win it. So I've been really learning about that balance. And the thing that's really cool, especially writing this rough draft, is that you can have free thought and let your ideas just run wild. But because you have something like that plot line, your ideas run wild in the right direction. It's like a river where the waters can course and team in many different directions, but they're all headed down the same general area. They're going toward the destination. And you want to be mindful of both. Some people edit their work to death while they're working on it from the start. They overthink everything and they feel discouraged. Other people don't have the necessary guidelines to make their story make sense by the time they're done writing it. So I love to have that balance. I love to have that brainstorming session and also that tough call of scenes you got to cut out because they don't make any sense. So if you're a writer who finds yourself bogged down by writer's block, by overthinking, try just letting your ideas run wild on paper. Coming up with 10 characters, loving all of them, but deciding, hey, I'm going to save those 7 for a different story and just focus on these 3. And also just finding different ways to jog your mind and jog your creativity, whether that's music, whether that's exercise, whether that's just a breath of fresh air, or even getting opinions from friends who may have great ideas that can help you along the way. Those are all valid options. But if you're a writer who finds yourself a little bit overwhelmed when you look back at your writing and realize none of it makes sense together, a plotline could be incredibly helpful. Or even a chart. Like, I know charting can be boring sometimes, but it can also be really influential if it helps you build the kind of characters people want to love and want to read about and make sense in a world together. They foil each other, which means they have different attributes that either complement each other or stand out against each other specifically, so that you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference between someone who's hot-headed and immature and somebody who's cool, calm, and collected. Between somebody who's intelligent and professional versus someone who's joyous and carefree. And these character differences highlight the strengths of each of their own arguments of the way life should be lived. And that's something I've loved working on with Sentinels Underground, is trying to balance everything together perfectly. Trying to balance descriptions of the marble cities, which are these colonies on the planet of Centaurus. Descriptions of the technology and all of the cool advances that they're making in the realm of robotics and AI and weaponry. Also looking at something like characters, and how do I take each of my characters and give them multiple moments to shine, not just one, and multiple moments to grow into who they long to be, or to fall back into old habits they never wanted to enter again. And also looking at action and dialogue. Now, action and dialogue are probably what I tend toward the most, just because I know as a reader, I don't want to be bogged down for too long without a new progression in the story. But at the same point in time, action needs to be done in such a way that it's riveting, understandable, and clear to the actions of the heroes and the villains, or one party or another, if there's no clear hero or villain at all, like some stories tend to do. So another thing that I had to do is I had to consider, how is book 3 going to start based on how book 2 ended? And that was a real fun project, recognizing the story threads that I had running, those that I'd tied up and those that I hadn't tied up yet, and looking into why did I leave those unended, and how can I let Sentinels Underground put a bow on them, finish them up perfectly. And writing during quarantine has challenged me to push myself and grow myself in a lot of ways I never expected. And it's really been interesting just seeing the amount of free time that I have, still trying to finish up college, but also the amount of time it takes to be writing in a direct mindset. Now, writing doesn't need to take over your life. You need to spend time with family, with friends, even if it's over video chats and other things. But the more time you have to write, the more you don't want to burn yourself out, but you want to write because of the passion of it, write because of the love of the story you're telling and the people you get to inspire and tell it to. So I hope this encourages you guys to keep writing. This encourages you guys to take a little time that you have now and let your imagination run wild. Think about some of your favorite stories. Think about how you would have done them differently, or think about something no one's ever done before. That's half the joy of fiction, is considering your own take on the world we live in, your own take even on the future or the past, and recognizing key truths about humanity, the world God has placed us in, and so many other different people, the joys and the struggles that they face. So it's really cool just to learn more about my own writing. I'm always seeking to grow. I'm always seeking to improve. So if you guys have any ideas for ways that I could improve, I'd love to hear them, or even ways I could improve these videos. So guys, I also want to just hear from you about stories that I can be analyzing in upcoming videos, because I want to start a series of some of my favorite authors or some of my favorite directors and how they've crafted stories that really touched me. And I also want to hear from you guys about what types of writing are you seeking to do? Or what tips do you think would help you? Whether it's how to write better characters, how to develop better settings, how to make more tension in each scene that really seems to last and seems to matter. Or even what kind of themes I enjoy to use in my writing. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. And I'd love it if you could subscribe to this channel to hear more. Maybe like this video. And look at my books. Check them out and see what you think about them. See what I could be diving into next. And Sentinels Underground is a really exciting project. But I'm even more excited about all the future projects that I have lined up, which I'll probably tell you guys about soon. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video.